So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us at Beyond Step 3, the magic of endpoint provisioning. And endpoint provisioning is what we're going to talk about today. But first, before we get started, I just wanted to say thanks to everyone at JNUC. There's always so many great presentations, and so we really appreciate you spending some time with us. Good news is I think we'll be able to watch all the presentations that we want to this year because of the format. But again, thanks for spending some time with us. So like I said, we're going to be talking about endpoint provisioning. My name's Eric Pye. I'm the VP of Business Development at Rocketman Tech. And with us, who's going to be showing us a little bit of a live demo, is Chad Lawson, one of our lead Rocketman engineers. And here at Rocketman, we are very... Hi, Chad. Here at Rocketman, we are very much invested in Jamf at all stages. So everything from the jumpstart to trying to get those nuanced little idiosyncrasies ironed out with Jamf. Today, we're going to be focusing a bit on zero-touch provisioning, and more specifically, how you're going to be able to achieve that. And it all starts with endpoint provisioning. But I think all of us in the room here, everyone involved in IT, this probably rings true to everyone. Sometimes magic is just someone spending more time on something than anyone else might reasonably expect. And I think that's what we all do. If you're in this room, you know what that's like. We put a whole lot of time into making things seamless. And in the world of metaphors, we could have functioned this whole presentation after the Wizard of Oz, and we could have gone with the man behind the curtain. My favorite part about this quote, though, is the emphasis on more effort than anyone else might reasonably expect. I'd love to see a show of hands in this giant auditorium if you know what it's like to pour your blood, sweat, and tears, maybe a little bit of coffee and alcohol, into making something extremely complex look simple. Wow, Chad, just take a look at all those hands. Amazing. And that's what we're here to talk about today, making the complex simple. We need to cut to the whole video now, because as much as I want to jump into a demo and set the stage on a bit of why, I think to solidify our magic theme, Chad has a magic trick for us. Is that right?
Yeah, so I just wanted to start off by doing a fairly basic card trick. So Eric, if you would do me a favor, I'm going to have you reach in and take a card, any card.
Yeah, let me just go. All right. I've got one.
Perfect. All right. Go ahead and show that to the audience. Make sure I don't see it. Let me know when you've got that memorized.
I think we've all got it.
All right. Then I'm going to go ahead and have you place that back anywhere you want in the deck.
Okay.
All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and give these cards just a really quick shuffle. Okay, was this your card?
It is not.
Was this your card?
Also not.
How about this card?
Really good guess, but
All
also
right.
not.
Well, luckily I am a better engineer than I am a magician, so I will just hand it back over to you.
And that is perfect, Chad, because we will be leaning on your engineering prowess more than anything for the rest of this presentation. But before we get going, I just want to dive into a bit of the why endpoint provisioning. We have so many different tools at our fingertips when it comes to deploying devices and trying to make a seamless interaction. But let's take a step back. None of this should really be news to anybody, but why do we need endpoint provisioning? It closes the loop. It's the final step to create a provisioning workflow that is as close to zero touch as possible. Once our end users fire up their device for the first time and they finish the setup assistant where the pre-stage enrollment kicks off, there may still be things happening in the background. And our next step, we want to inform them just so they don't start tinkering around, or maybe we need them to input some sort of number for inventory purposes. You know, regardless of tech literacy, our beloved end users are predictably unpredictable. We can keep them in the loop about what's happening, what's still installing, what's next, so they're not just left looking at a home screen while critical steps are happening. With clear on-screen instructions, videos, even corporate branding, we not only have a smooth and elegant onboarding experience that saves time and headaches for IT, but it's often your chance to make an impactful first impression with a new hire on the first day of work. How often does a new hire spend their first day bouncing between HR meetings? You got to do those corporate Kool-Aid meetings about being efficient and the best that they can be. And there's a big poster about motivation. And then they have an experience with their new company assets that's confusing and anything but efficient. Endpoint provisioning, more specifically in this presentation, Dep Notify, helps us bridge that human element. That human element is also something I just want to talk about for just a skosh longer. Because let's face it, all of us working on the front lines of IT, you always have those, okay, now I've seen everything moments. The funny part is you just continue to keep having now I've seen everything moments. So let's look at the highly scientific and legitimate data that backs that up. The international magnitudal scale of user foolprooficity in a non-cyborg environment, which we all work in, which is an extremely legitimate organization. It follows the same parameters as a rational function. We can only approach foolproof to an infinitely small degree of separation, but you can never truly intersect that line and cross over into this mystical realm of foolproof. Now, why is that? It's not just because Gandalf said so, which is reason enough for most of us, but it's because our end users are human. And regardless of where they fall on the spectrum of tech literacy, humans with our natural, we'll just call it creativity, lends itself to us being infinitely proficient at finding new ways to break things. As system administrators, as IT directors, Jamf power users, it's our job to account for those little nuances and potential speed bumps to create an elegant experience out of a complex deployment. So that's a little bit of the whys of endpoint provisioning. I know there's a lot of specific examples, so I want to take it a step further and kick it over to Chad to talk about why endpoint provisioning versus IT-based provisioning, and why it's not just reducing our headaches and efficiency bottlenecks.
Thanks, Eric. Before I kick into this, I just want to double check. Is this your card by chance? No?
It is not.
All right. Worth another try. So a couple different ideas for this. The first one being cost. Not only think about cost in terms of the amount of time we take. I've worked at a job where we had to rock, paper, scissors for who would answer the call on Friday at 4 o'clock for that one really quick question that we knew was going to take forever. And so when you get those calls at late on Friday and saying, we've got 20 new people arriving on Monday, can you get machines set up? I mean, there were the horrible old days where before I encountered Jamf, even with some of those older imaging tools that we had, it would still take a ridiculous amount of time to get a new machine set up. And even now with the tools that we have, even using Jamf, Dep Notify, automated device enrollment, even bringing all these workflows down, it still takes a non-zero amount of time. And for us to be doing that work in IT, that time starts stacking up. And even if we completely manage to automate ourselves out of a job, we won't. Because the minute we get there, much like that scale of trying to make things foolproof, there's always that scale of trying to get rid of our workflows through automation, only to have other things to do. So if we can turn around and take that time, that cost of our time, and hand it off and distribute it, then all of a sudden by handing it off to each person, and then it's a reduced cost distributed across employees instead of through one person. But also, Eric already mentioned the idea of closing that loop and giving the employees ownership. There have been multiple presentations at JNUC talking about the power of embracing and empowering our users with their devices. And this gives us the ability to give them that out-of-box experience, like opening a package, opening that present on Christmas, taking the machine out and setting it up. It is now stopped becoming the company machine they have to use, and they are connected to this device. It is now their computer, even though we are still the ones controlling it, we are still the ones driving it. We're giving them the experience while retaining the control. We've got the best of both worlds in that case. But also there are some unique circumstances that have come out of this year. We were working with customers in March and getting everything set up and ready to go with all the workflows we wanted. And suddenly everything had to be changed to now we're not shipping these machines to the employees' mail stop within the company. We're sending it directly to their houses, and we need to be able to tweak and make sure everything still works. And if we're having to do that with IT, if we're having to do that internally, the machines have to come to us, and then we still have to get those machines out, and there are just too many concerns. Whereas logistically, if we can just send it directly to them, as Eric said, we're closing that loop. We're bringing everything together. So with those three things, it's just so much value in time, in energy, and in morale of being able to hand this off. Eric? Oh, wait, before Eric, sorry, is this, no, I already did that one. How about this one? Is this your card? No?
That is still not my card. At this rate, we'll find the card. There's only 40 or 52 possibilities, just a numbers game. I think we've done a good job of setting the stage for why endpoint provisioning is important. Using Apple Business Manager, Dep Notify, and the various Jamf components, Chad's going to go ahead and share a screen and show us how we tie this all together and put a bow on top of it to close that loop.
All right, I need to start over here. Excuse me as I continue to rearrange. I know this needs to be... I want to start off in Jamf and looking at the various components and the various pieces that we're doing in here. And this isn't going to look any different than what you might expect. This piece should seem fairly normal to everybody that's used Jamf. I have a collection of policies all based on installing applications. They all use our check-in trigger, our once per computer frequency. They're scoped to all the computers. Everyone in the company needs these applications. I have a couple of applications like Creative Cloud that may only go to individual people in the marketing department. I may have certain printers that only go to people in certain buildings. But in general, I'm just using my policies like I would for any other particular setup. Where I'm really driving this home is with this category called onboarding. I have two policies here, onboarding via DEP, automated device enrollment, and one for user-initiated enrollment. They are essentially the same policy. They both run a script called onboarding. One is set up to only go to computers that are enrolled via DEP. The other one is excluding them, and it's for anyone that gets brought in through user-initiated enrollment. You'll see I have these two packages that are coming in for installing the company assets. This is our welcome video, our logo, and then Dep Notify to become that shiny magic trick that our audience sees. But in both cases, we're still running the onboarding script the same way. Down below that, I have some other policies. Now, you'll notice, for example, these two. I have them both set to the same trigger, initial setup, which you'll see in my script momentarily. The rename computer, and then if we have to, binding to Active Directory. I'm using the same trigger. I could have broken them up in my script to be two separate things, but part of it is I don't want my script getting overly complicated. I want to keep everything lean and clean. So I'm using numbers at the beginning so that they run alphabetically based on this trigger, but also it gives me a nice little visual here. I have the separate one registering the device to user, which runs a separate script, also utilizing components of Dep Notify you won't see in my main script to give the user interaction to say what building are they in, what department are they in, and enter in their name if necessary so that we can capture all that information into our user and location information. Now, in the script itself, this is the script that I've been working on I've been tinkering and adjusting for the last couple of years. This all started in 2018 with Richard Purvis, aka Franton, on the Mac Admin Slack. He posted this. I managed to find it a couple of weeks later. If he were to look at this script now, it's not going to look anything like the one he started. There's certain lines in there to be sure, but much like two different artists might present something differently. This looks different on my screen than it does on his. Up at the top, I have some configuration lines and pointing to that logo, mentioning the company's name. And I've taken his individual blocks of code and broken them up into functions. I am disabling sleep. I am disabling regular Jamf check-ins. We're waiting to make sure that we're in a user environment before we proceed. And then we're launching dep notify. I have a cleanup function for later. The two that I have added, my two particular pieces of standing on the shoulders of giants, if you will, is I didn't like constantly having to do echo a bunch of text output to the log. So I created a function so I could just say dep notify and then my text and drive that screen. I have a Jamf command. Instead of having to constantly run user local bin Jamf, I can now say Jamf command recon or Jamf command policy, or if I say Jamf command register device, it then triggers the individual event for that policy. So when the script actually is run in our workflow, it runs those initial setup pieces, but then I just fill in the particular parts of my workflow, and these match what you saw in the Jamf screen. I'm doing some commands to say, to display the information about the company, but the very first thing I trigger is asking the user to register. And as I mentioned, this is driving a script that uses the pieces that Richard had embedded in his script to pull in all that registration information. I've stripped it out and put it in a separate policy. After that, it runs the policies that are triggered by the initial setup to rename the computer, because I don't want to, if I'm binding to Active Directory, I don't want it to be called Chad's MacBook Air. I want it to have a name that is more consistent with the organizational standards so that it shows up in AD better. And so that if it has the apostrophe in it or the name is too long, it doesn't fail out. After that, I am just doing a basic Jamf policy command. All of those policies you saw that were there that are just set up for once per computer on a recurring frequency, they're going to run at this point. So that if something were to happen and this didn't work, if this were to drop out, either something happens with the machine changing networks in the middle of the enrollment trigger, if it all of a sudden a profile comes down, it changes networks, and for some reason that 1 in 100 time that the enrollment complete trigger doesn't happen, I want to be able to have all those recurring check-ins still finish the job on their next normal check-in. I then run a recon so that I can gather that information about which building and department they're in. And then I have a number of different triggers that you saw to just pull in departmental apps. This is only the apps that those individual groups are going to need. One last recon so that this will capture any potential. Think about extension attributes, that every time you run a script-based extension attribute, that might trigger smart groups, which then trigger more policies. All these pieces we put into Jamf that are part of our normal workflows, I want to be able to control and capture now. So one more recon updates my extension attributes, updates my smart groups, and then one last policy command picks up anything that needs to happen for this computer that wasn't captured before. And then last but not least, I want to have a moment to show my audience a video. I want to welcome them to the company. And you think about those welcome videos that usually have some cheesy, slick guy giving that overly dramatic voice, welcoming you to the company. I want to be able to present that to them and give them that full experience that Eric was talking about. And with that, Eric, I want to try one more time.
Nope. Sir, are you promising us, Chad, that are you promising us that the video that we're going to share is not going to be cheesy or over the top?
I would never, ever think about doing anything like that. I absolutely would never want to do that. Of course. I will say this. I have a demonstration ready to go of running an onboarding video triggered by self-service. Should I go ahead and run that now?
That sounds great. Let's go ahead and bring it up.
So over here I have self-service, and I have a little demo prepared as a policy. So I'm bringing up dep notify in full screen mode. We have our company logo, our text, and the very first thing we're doing is bringing up the script, the policy that you saw that interacts with the user to use dep notify's built-in registration capabilities. I have it off in a separate script, a separate policy, but this could have been directly embedded within. When I click to configure my device, the script that I've written has an API call that brings in all of our buildings, brings in all of our departments, and then when I hit register, it takes that information from dep notify's plist files, and then it does another API call updating the computer's record with what building their department they're in. That triggers then gets ready the other policies that you saw that are scoped either to the building or department, as well as updating any smart groups that require it. From there we go through, we do all the policies you saw of setting the computer's name, running our global set of policies, doing a recon and installing department apps, updating the inventory for one last policy check before presenting the user with the video.
Good morning and welcome to Abracadabco. Your computer is almost set up and ready for you to use, but first, is this your card? Welcome aboard.
Okay.
Wow. That was amazing, Chad. Thanks for putting that together. I definitely didn't see that coming, so that was very exciting. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our presentation on dep notify and endpoint provisioning. I know this kind of scratches the tip of the iceberg. Chad's got a running blog series on how he pulls some of these off with a little bit more information, and we'll also be posting our GitHub link so you guys can get any of the source code that you're looking for there. So we'll be sure to follow up with that information. But again, thank you guys for sitting through our presentation, and I hope you were able to take something away from it and enjoy the rest of JNUC 2020. Also, huge thanks to Jamp for including us in this. Take care.